Hey everybody, what's up? Jordan Orell here, making my daily video on circumcision, and today I want to talk a little bit about the Intactivist movement. The movement of Intactivism is the movement that says every human being should have the right to make choices regarding their own bodies, specifically about pieces of their body being cut off. And in the United States, the main contingency, which is having bits of their body cut off without their consent, is baby boys, and to a lot of intersex children as well, although there are very few intersex children, so in the large scheme of things it's a small number. But over 50%, or now around 50%, possibly even less, of baby boys have their foreskin cut off when they're born. It's called circumcision, and it removes the foreskin, which is a very, very erogenous tissue. It's very, very important for sexual function, and a lot of men are getting very, very angry and upset that they essentially, as they see it, accurately, have had their genitals mutilated. And because of that, there's a very rapidly growing movement that is trying to spread this idea that everybody should have the right to keep the body that they were born with, called bodily integrity, bodily autonomy, or genital integrity or genital autonomy. So this movement has been growing for the last 30 years for the most, or 40 years I should say, in its sort of modern iteration, starting with Marilyn Milos, who is one of the is the biggest, has been historically the biggest voice in the movement. She's now around 80 years old, I believe, and winding down a little bit. Yeah, she started when she was 39, I believe, and then has been doing it for the past 40 years now. And so she started an organization called NoCirc, and that sort of helps gain more information about the foreskin, why it's valuable, and start promoting that, starting a lot of other people being sort of inspired to do the similar work and spread information about circumcision. And so since then, there's been a lot that's happened. I'm not the most qualified person to speak on the entirety of the movement, but there's a lot of organizations that have come up since then, and a lot of individuals who have done a lot of different things to try to make this movement succeed. And there's a lot of different levels that this movement works at, that Intactivism works at. And so essentially what Intactivists do is they inform people about the harm of circumcision, of genital cutting, and there's many levels to that. There's the emotional, psychological harm that it does to a man. There's the human rights violation, that it is essentially violating a human right, and in that way many men feel very violated that they don't have the choice to keep their own body. There's the physical damage of, as I said, the functions and the sensitivity removed, and many complications that come from circumcision, and all the complications that come with every circumcision, which is that sexual damage, as well as physical damage. Many men, once they learn that their penis has been altered and isn't supposed to have a big scar on it, and be exposed all the time, that's actually not the natural way the human body is meant to be, find it very aesthetically disturbing that someone else has decided what their penis is going to look like forever, versus what they were born with. So there's and also, there's so many levels. There's also religious. It infringes upon a child's religious right when he's branded with this religious sacrifice made on him on behalf of him by his parents, who he may grow to disagree with. And so Intactivism tries to educate people about all these things, about the history of circumcision and how it was started to prevent masturbation, how it has a long history of, excuse after excuse after excuse, trying to come up with some medical justification and not really having any that make even a bit of sense. It's like cancer, is crazy. They say it prevents cancer. Yeah, if you cut off your nose, you're not going to get cancer on your nose. If you cut off your breast, you're not going to get breast cancer, which is thousands of times more likely than cancer of the foreskin. It's just absurd. Penile, another was UTIs, urinary tract infections. It's just crazy. You can take antibiotics to cure urinary tract infections. Females get them at a much higher rate. And that same excuse is used for female genital mutilation. Well, it'll help with UTIs, it'll help with, it'll help prevent other diseases. It's just, anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. So we spread information about all of these. You can talk to people one-on-one. That's how a lot of intactivists work. They just talk to people about it. They talk to their friends, they talk to their family. They are rideshare drivers and talk to their passengers about it. Should their passengers happen to ask, what else do you do besides this? Well, I host a podcast, I work for a nonprofit, I do some other things, and this is what it's all about. And so it's very easy to talk to someone about it just by being involved in the cause, and people ask you, what else do you do? And you say, well, this is one thing I do. And sometimes it sparks conversation. And it can be working with an organization, like the local one here is Colorado Advocates for Body Integrity and Children's Rights, Colorado ABC, who works to educate the public at Gay Pride Parade. They have a booth, they have one at People's Fair, as well as putting on screenings of movies like Eliangar Sargon's The Cut. He also has a podcast, but his film, The Cut, which was a Jewish documentary about circumcision, or Brennan Marotta's American Circumcision documentary. And so they do those. Another form of intactivism is creating media, creating podcasts, creating films, writing papers. It can be academic. There's a lot of academic intactivists who have written some really amazing papers, and now we have quite a bit of theoretical support for our cause. Doing research, you can research about the foreskin, you can research about the psychological damage of it, you can research about the sexual functions. There's endless different kind of ways you can be an intactivist, but it's anything that ultimately creates more materials for us to share with people, or informs people directly, or informs people indirectly. Or you could be an intactivist who just funds other intactivists, who just gives money to people who are in this cause. It's a notoriously underfunded cause. A lot of people need money and can be a lot more effective if they have more money. So you can be an intactivist just by donating, and some of the best intactivists I know, I don't even really know them, but I know that they helped fund, for example, Eric Klopper's play. Without that, he wouldn't have had the promotion, he wouldn't have had the audience he had, he wouldn't have been able to rent the theater, and so having that financial support is also really important for intactivists. It can also be around healing work. If I hadn't received healing work for myself, I know I wouldn't be able to do the work that I'm doing, and so that's also can be a form of intactivism. Another can be training activists. If you train more activists to be better activists, or can convince people, do protests. That's another thing. People will just go out in the streets and have protests and invite other local activists out, and usually you can get people out if they're interested enough in the cause. Not every time, and sometimes it's a very small protest, sometimes it's bigger, but you just keep on. The most fundamental thing about intactivism is persistence. You just have to keep on sort of generating this from within, which isn't hard for a lot of intactivists, because a lot, who have learned a lot about circumcision and its harm are extremely motivated and upset about this issue because they know how harmful it's been for them personally. They know how harmful it's been for other men. And so, yeah, I think if there's anything else I want to say, the future of Intactivism is very bright, and I see this movement growing much larger, and there being many more opportunities for Intactivists to do make a lot of change around this issue very soon. Because once it's hard because in some places there aren't as many people who know about this, and so it's harder to find people around you who are interested in it. But once it grows big enough and enough people start to really understand this issue, I think it'll take on a momentum of its own and really start to become a mainstream conversation, which I would say should be the ultimate goal of Intactivism, is to get the circumcision debate into the mainstream so that people are really taking it seriously and thinking about it, and just bringing it up as a kind of like gay rights was in 2012. It's like just the thing to talk about. It's just something that everybody has an opinion on. Everybody wants to know what everybody else thinks. There's this whole like social phenomena behind it, and also, Intactivism, I should say, the ultimate goal of it really is to have a law that bans it and makes it illegal across the country. However, for that to happen, we also have to shift society's opinions on it and really make everybody aware of it, or at least enough people aware of it so that it's really, there's a lot of people who are very against it. If there's not a lot of people who feel strongly about it, it'll continue to be, some people are really angry about it, some people are angry that other people are angry about it, and just kind of goes back and forth. But if there's enough people who really, really care about it, like another thing with gay rights, what really made it succeed was that everybody started to realize that they know people who are gay. Like with older generations, that kind of was much more hidden and not well publicized. And that's largely because as a social phenomenon, it was so repressed. Now with circumcision, it's becoming more and more common for men to be upset about this because of the internet, because they can read about it online and become aware of it very easily, and be aware of the truth about it very easily. And so more and more I'm meeting men who are upset about it, and people who understand it just either intuitively, because I think our generation also is more on the side of human rights and sort of progressive movement than perhaps older generations are, and yeah, there's a lot of men who are increasingly willing to speak up about it and say, I'm not okay that this happened to me, and we need to stop doing this. One final thing, Foragen, who's the other company I work for, is trying to regenerate the human foreskin using regenerative medicine for guys who are circumcised and would rather not be. And sometimes people are unsure how that stands with Intactivism, and I think that the right way to understand it is simply, right now people just don't know enough about it for Foragen to be funded, and so we have essentially the same goal, which is to educate people about the functions of the foreskin, and why it's valuable, and get people to really understand that universally, with the secondary motivation, or the second step for Intactivists being to then end circumcision and say, okay, so that means we shouldn't do it anymore. And Foragen, everybody there agrees with that, of course, but also takes it one step further by, their goal isn't actually to end circumcision, although they do that with their materials that they put out. But the ultimate goal of Foragen is to then come to a full solution to actually regenerate that body part for everybody who is really wants it back. And so, they essentially have most of the same methods right now of just like informing people about this, of just telling people, hey, this is really horrible. We need to value the foreskin. We need to value bodily autonomy, value bodily integrity. I think we need to focus on the fact that both Intactivism and Foragen are groups that are trying to spread this truth. A lot of people are worried, well, does Foragen really care about the movement or whatever? And it's like, well, that's not their ultimate goal, no. But in effect, what they're doing is spreading the word about this, and I think you'll see in the upcoming months and years, Foragen could actually be more effective about spreading the truth about the value of foreskin than almost any activist group ever has been. They have more funding because people really want this body part back, and there's some really, really smart people at Foragen, such as Eric Klopper, who actually left to do his own thing, because Foragen really needs to maintain a medical, scientific, non-activist type stance. We're just trying to regenerate this body part. We're not trying to attack any religion. We're not trying to attack the medical establishment. And yeah, I think you'll see though in the next couple years, especially if we succeed before the Intactivist movement succeeds, it's like when you can grow back that part of the body and have people giving testimonies about how much better it makes their penis function, and the fact it makes it larger, it makes it more pleasurable, it makes it better for the female partner or the other male partner as well. I think you're going to see a really, really positive effect. Oh, my sweet potato fries already. So yeah, because when Foragen is spreading that message, people are just going to keep on realizing more and more oh shit, this body part's actually really, really valuable. Maybe we shouldn't be cutting it off. Because right now there's just not enough people reporting on that. Most of the men who get it cut off as adults have motives for why they want it removed, and that makes them less likely to actually, be upset about it, because they already had psychological weird stuff around it where they felt shitty about it, and so even if it's just placebo, they feel better about having that part of their body removed sometimes. Even so, you would expect them to report a lot better on it because of that placebo effect, and there's still at least a slight decrease in sexual enjoyment when they get circumcised as adults. Although some men, of course, report very severe loss in sensitivity, as you'd expect when cutting off most of the nerves in the penis. So, another thing about Intactivists, they tend to go on rants occasionally and have a hard time keeping all this information inside of them, because they just want everybody to know and understand that this is so fucked up. We need to stop cutting parts of babies' penises off. It's the most fucked up thing in the world. It's so common sense. It's so easy to understand. How can people keep doing this? It's fucking crazy. So yeah. Keep on speaking up. Keep on creating materials. Keep on working with local Intactivist organizations. Keep on thinking about this issue, psychological healing for yourself. Be gentle. Get people to listen by listening to them first and meeting them where they are. Just attacking and just being aggressive and violent and screaming at people tends not to be the best Intactivism, so just, take a step back and think, how can I be the most effective activist? What's my gift? What's my superpower? How can I contribute to this movement? There's so many ways, and you're the only one who knows what's best for you. So if you'd like to talk to me, I'd love to get to know you guys more and find out more what's your favorite kind of activism and what you think, what your thoughts on the Intactivist movement are. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will talk to you again tomorrow.